this topic here, T66 Growing with Optimism. This is about how we can grow our community, create public goods, and make the best experiences possible with optimism. And so I wrote that first I can share an introduction to optimism and an overview of plans to start Optimism Fractal. I'm very excited to share optimism with the Eden Fractal community and with everybody who might be watching here. And I believe our collaborations will create profound benefits for all. Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of collaboration opportunities here and really excited to share it. And there's a website, optimism.io. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts. And I think this will be a discussion, this is kind of like a first introduction, sharing these ideas for the first time with a lot of people here. And I think this would be an ongoing topic, I think, because I think there's a lot of collaborations with Eden Fractal and Optimism, as well as this Optimism Fractal too. I worked on a proposal with Rosemary and Tadas and Vlad this past week that I'll introduce in a little bit for the Optimism Fractal stuff. But first, I'll just share a little bit of an introduction to Optimism. So I mentioned optimism.io. This is a website where you can learn in general about optimism. They identify it as a low-cost and lightning-fast Ethereum L2 blockchain powered by Optimism, which is kind of a technical explanation. Basically, if people aren't familiar, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Ethereum. It's the second largest blockchain, and it's a huge thriving community building Web3 applications, helping people be more, helping people cooperate and coordinate, and growing with principles of decentralization and so forth. I don't have to go into it too much because you know about it, but essentially Optimism is working with Ethereum. It's a layer 2, which means that it's like building on top of Ethereum, and it scales it so you can do more transactions. Ethereum is really expensive, so it has a great technology that they've been building for several years to scale up Ethereum and allow people to get the benefits of Ethereum with this layer 2 called Optimism. In addition, Optimism, it's also community. It's a collective. They call it the Optimism Collective. You could explore their website, and I encourage you to do so. All these tabs up top are really interesting, like the Superchain and the ecosystem and all these different things. I can show you a bit of a high-level overview here. This is one page I really like. It's introducing the Optimism Collective, where they originally announced Optimism has been running for about 2 years or so. But they've also been building for longer than that. They're building other public goods with Ethereum, and they have a really cool story where basically the people who were building Optimism, they were building it, but it was really a public good. It's something that's good for everybody, but they didn't have a funding model. And Ethereum didn't have that. So the people who designed it, they had all these cool technical innovations, and they realized the importance of funding public goods, which is also something that's really valuable that we're doing here. Like the idea of fractally and Eden Fractal, a big part of it has been, how do we fund public goods? How do we help people coordinate? How do we empower communities to grow together and make the best experience possible, do awesome stuff together in ways that aren't possible with like private businesses and so forth. Private business can be great in ways too, of course, but basically Optimism Collective is a new type of community designed to reward public goods and build a sustainable future for Ethereum and for the world, really. And then they have a really nice little graphic here where they talk about how public goods are the foundation of our society, but they often go underfunded when incentives aren't properly aligned, where many people have to make trade-offs between earning profit and building for the public good. And so we're seeing these same patterns play in Web3. We're also seeing Eden Fractal too. Like, we've been doing a huge amount of work. So many people doing amazing work. We haven't received much funding here. And I mean, we're grateful for what we receive, but like we really want to grow it, and more funding would be helpful, and more support and so forth. So an Optimism is built to create public goods with Ethereum. So they have a really nice thing. You can read it, and maybe I'll just scroll through. I don't know if I'll read it all out loud, but basically they have this new model for properly rewarding those who create or sustain public goods. And as you can see, as I scroll down, the village gets built more. So there's a huge amount of people in this community. There's a huge amount of people in Ethereum. We've been working mostly with the Antelope community, but the Ethereum community is much larger. And the Optimism community as well. So they're all about creating mutual benefit, and they have a fairness ratio where they're saying how much impact you create, how much you positively benefit the world and the communities around you, and you should receive a profit for that. So that's one of the things that they're always trying to do. They have a really interesting idea called Esther's Phoenix that I can go into a little bit about, like, just, well, I don't know, there's so much I could say, so maybe I'll try to keep it really concise. But yeah, basically they have this technology that works quite well, and many businesses are building on it, and they use funding to reward projects building for the public good. And so I think that there's like a really great collaboration between Eden Fractal and all the people here, also Alien Worlds Fractal, Aquadac, Art Fractal, all the people who are into these cool kinds of consensus games and building open source software and creating cool media. And just in general, like, there's so many people building, like, making great music with Optimism or making great art and so forth. There's lots of great ways to build it with Optimism and receive funding. They have really interesting kind of governance model too, where they have like where they have a citizens house, which I'll get into a bit, where they have a bunch of people who are like, you know, verified humans, kind of like how we have here. So we're making sure it's not bots, and then they're determining how to build a collaborative ecosystem and reward public goods to help the whole community grow and grow and grow. So that's kind of like a high level introduction that I like that they put together on this website here, and you can read more there. And they have these links here where you can check out their collective vision. I mentioned that thing with Essos Phoenix, which is really interesting, and you can learn about more about how it works and stuff like that. You can open up the tabs. I spent a lot of time. There's so much to read here. The optimism vision is really inspiring, and if you read this, I think you'll see it's very aligned. And one of the big things that they're really about is retroactive public goods funding. So that's kind of like what we do here at Eden Fractal, where people share what they did over the past week, and then they get ranked higher or lower or higher, and they get respect, and they can receive rewards by doing great stuff. So they have this idea where retroactive public goods funding, people can just help out optimism in different ways. And then when people help, then people, they have this system called RetroPGF that can help people fund each other. So I'll go back to the main website here, and then I'll show one more page here that I think will be, which is quite central to the vision of optimism and how it's working. And this is about the retroactive public goods funding. They call this RetroPGF for short, and they say it's changing the way that impact is rewarded. And you can learn, you know, lots of reviews and stuff like that. There's a nicely made website where a lot of the stuff I kind of went over a little bit. So perhaps you can just read it. If anybody's watching, you can pause the video and look at it. But basically, a lot of the same stuff that I explained, but they explain it very well. I'd encourage you to read it in their words. And this RetroPGF, they've, as far as I know, it's the largest retroactive public goods funding mechanism in the world. They're in their third round, and it's like it's a little bit like Pomelo, but it's a lot bigger than Pomelo. So the first one they did, they gave away $1 million, and they had like 40 people who decided where to allocate that $1 million across a bunch of people who are building open source software and creating media and helpful education, stuff like that. And then it's gotten progressively bigger. They have an OP token that they're distributing, and now they're going to do the biggest round so far. And it's like, for like, compared to Pomelo, it's like, you know, 100 or 500 or 1,000 times more. I don't know the exact number, but it's like way more funding available in this optimism community. And the way this works is basically people can be nominated to earn from the RetroPGF, and then there's currently like 200 voters who are in the Citizens House who can vote to distribute that. So I think this is a really good opportunity. I mean, we've been building with Antelope for a long time, since we've been starting with EOS, and there's many amazing people in the Antelope and EOS and Alien Worlds communities, and we have much amazing software and all these great collaborations, stuff like that. And this can be another way where, in addition to collaborating with Antelope communities, we can also collaborate with these Ethereum communities. Optimism can also be a door opening to many more Ethereum communities too. And one thing I should also note here too is that Optimism is building something called the OP stack, and they're building something called a Superchain with this as well. So the OP stack, it's kind of like Antelope. You know how the Antelope, like the ENF and the different Antelope chains and the coalition are all working on this Antelope software, which is an open source software, which allows all the different people building with Antelope blockchains and community computers to build on the same common software. So, you know, there can be IVC and Wax and EOS and Telos and UX can all work together. Optimism is doing kind of a similar thing with the OP stack, which is for layer twos building on Ethereum. It works very closely with Ethereum, but it has more scalability and some more functionality, and it's quite successful. They have this thing called the Superchain, and some of the biggest companies in the world are building blockchains and building their companies and building their communities with this OP stack. For example, Coinbase recently released the Base blockchain, and that is built with the OP stack. If you go to base.org, I believe is the site for here. I'm also working on curating these on the Eden Creator site, but it's kind of messy right now, so I'm working on doing it more. But you can see here, you can look at their blogs. They could talk about how they're building on OP stack. Also, OpenAI, which is the biggest AI company in the world, and was recently funded something like $10 billion from Microsoft. They're building WorldCoin, and they're building WorldCoin on Optimism right now, and they're planning to build their own layer 2 on the OP stack as well. Also, Zora, which is one of the leading NFT platforms, they do some really cool art, and several others that are building some really exciting initiatives are all building with this software too. So it's like both Optimism, and then there's this whole chain of communities, or this whole like coalition of different communities who are all building with the same kind of stuff, and they're all quite very well aligned, where like different communities who make revenue with businesses, for example, they use that revenue to go back and fund public goods. And so they're very aligned, a highly aligned community who I think is interested in what we're doing. And then also will have much more resources to help fund what we're doing too.